Good morning, my friend. Dr. Lee Warren here with you with some Sunday reflection. It is all in August. We're on the 18th day of all in August, and it's Sunday morning. And today, I'm going to bring you back an episode we did last year about internal structure, like understanding that you can't really change your life or hold up against the things that life is going to bring you until you get your internal structure right, the internal parts that are going to be important at holding you up when things get hard. Going back to a conversation that I had with you last year on All in August, referencing a book by Erwin McManus called Mind Shift. Just a really good little talk. But before we do that, I just want to have a little reflection with you. And we're here in the middle of August. And I just want you to ask yourself some questions. How is it going? Have you made a decision to go all in? And do you feel that traction starting to happen? Or have you slipped up in some way? Have you fallen back into old patterns? Now's the time to reassess for deviance from the plan, from where you are, from how committed you are. Maybe you woke up this morning and you got a hangover, you got a headache, you did the thing again. You spent the money again, you clicked on the thing again, you watched that video you shouldn't have watched again, you called that person you shouldn't be in a relationship with again. Maybe you had that bottle of wine again. Maybe, whatever it is, you just haven't made the progress or you've fallen off the track. Guess what? It's time to rectify that. It's time to get back all in. Because sometimes we make this mistake. We say, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 days. I'm really going to change my life. And then we mess up on the 17th. And then we say to ourselves, I'll just start again next month. So then we spend the next, 13, 14 days back in the way it used to be, building more resilience for how it's always been, building more synapses around how things never change, giving ourselves more evidence that we're going to stay just the way we've been. But guess what? You don't have to do that. You can just make today day one again. Just start over. Just get back after it. And you know what that'll do? It'll tell your brain that it's not the boss of you. It'll tell that old habit that you're taking control again. It'll start to systematize starting over, giving yourself grace, recognizing that sometimes we make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we ruin the whole game. You see it on the Olympics all the time. You see somebody trip and fall. And then there's this amazing story where they get up and they continue on and they end up winning the race or finishing strongly, but they could have just quit. You see it sometimes where somebody falls and they just lay there on the track and they don't get back up. I don't want that to be you. I don't want it to be me anymore. When you wake up and it's day 18 and you messed up on day 17, you started the thing again, or you recognize that you didn't start, or you didn't do the thing that you should have done, or you did the thing that you shouldn't have done. Don't wait for September 1st to go all in on your own life today. So just reflect a little bit. Where am I at? Am I making it? Am I making progress? Do I feel that resistance changing? Do I feel myself making better decisions? Do I feel myself taking a little bit more command of my mind down, top-down control of my life? Do I feel like I'm connecting to the great physician more? Do I feel like I'm starting to feel hope and purpose maybe again? Does the light seem to be coming on a little bit more? This conversation we're about to have regarding internal structure will help you recognize those places where you need to shore up something on the inside that'll help you get past that day 17 hurdle and into day 18 and 19 and 20 and all the way through the end of all in August. And then you'll hit September 1st with some momentum, and you'll go into the end of this year recognizing that it's going to be different this time, that you're going to finally overcome, that you're going to start seeing the light again, you'll start making progress again. And you know what? Before you'll say, you know what, I really did it. I went all in and I made it happen. And I'm so grateful. I'm so glad things are finally changing. I feel that purpose and meaning, and I'm becoming healthier and feeling better and being happier because I decided to change my mind and change my life. And I decided to start today. Take a pencil or a pen and write some things down. What did you decide to go all in about? And how's it going? And is there any place that you need to shore up? Is there some internal structure that you need to fix? Make it happen. Today's the day, friend. Reflect a little bit, get after it. Here's an episode about internal structure that'll help you reset that idea of what you need to do on the inside to make the changes that need to happen on the outside stick. And we'll get after it right now. Good morning, my friend. I hope you're doing well. I am so excited to be speaking with you today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. I am a brain surgeon. I also write books and podcasts and do all kinds of things like that, but I'm a surgeon, a neurosurgeon at my core. And the thing that you have to know about that is that as a neurosurgeon, I have the ability and the license, the legal right, to change your mind. If you have something going on with your head, if you've gotten a head injury or a brain tumor or something like that, allowed to go in there. I'm allowed to go in there and change your mind. I can remove part of your brain. If it's injured, I can remove a blood clot or repair a skull fracture, or do something to change the way your brain works. But here's the secret. Here's the thing that surgeons don't often talk about. I can't make new brain cells for you. Okay? If you've blown up some of your brain, if you hit your head or had something happen to you or have an infection that removes or destroys tissue, I can't make new brain cells for you. Your creator can do that, but I can't do it. I can at best only try to improve the environment for the brain cells that are already there to work a little more efficiently. At best, I can remove pressure. I can take the situation and try to make it a little bit healthier, but I can't actually make your brain better. I can de-stress it. I can't make new brain cells for you. So here's the secret. You are already better than I am at your own brain surgery. That sounds funny to say, but it's true. We know from neuroscience, we know from the fact that you make new neurons every night. We know, according to Hebb's laws, that neurons that fire together wire together. That when you change the things that you think about, you change the experiences, the feelings, the thoughts, and the behaviors that you have, those four things together can create new synaptic pathways in your brain. And every day you have the ability, every second of your life, friend, you have the ability to change how your brain works and improve the way it has been and make things better. But here's the secret, and this is what All in August is all about, okay? The secret is that what got you here won't get you there. If you are looking for some change in your life, if you have gone through some massive thing, some trauma or tragedy or other big hard thing, and you're having a hard time finding your way back, or even if you haven't had that massive thing happen to you yet, even if your life's been pretty okay, but you just feel stuck and you just can't quite get there to where you feel like God's calling you or where you feel like you're supposed to be, if you feel like you're supposed to be making progress and you just can't do it and you're stuck in the same habits or the same things, the same thought loops, the same issues, the same relationships, and you just can't break through, then I'm telling you, friend, the problem is that what got you here won't get you there. You can change your mind, and that will help you change your life. And that is what we call self-brain surgery. So it sounds silly. It sounds like some motivational speaker thing, but it's not. On the other hand, as a scientist, I am also a man of faith, and I believe that you were created fearfully and wonderfully, and that this incredible design of your mind and brain and how they interface with one another is the communication center for how the Holy Spirit of the living God communicates with you. And if you're not a believer, that might sound crazy. But I would just say, hey, trust me for a second and say, this guy, this blonde-headed neurosurgeon, left-handed kid from Broken Bow, Oklahoma, who grew up to become a brain surgeon, just give me the benefit of the doubt to tell you this. I'm not crazy, okay? I have seen and experienced things in medicine that can't be explained without divine intervention. And you probably have too. So don't write it off and say this is just motivational speaking or that it's just optimism or any of those things. There are some things that you can learn. If you can connect your neuroscience and your life and your thinking and your faith all together, if you can smash them together, then you can do something amazing because you've figured out that what got you here won't get you there. And it's all in August. And we're going to try to get there this month because I'm always saying, look over my shoulder. My new book is called Hope is the First Dose. And one of the definitions of somebody I read, it said, hope is the belief that you can get there from here. And I'm just telling you, friend, you've gotten to this place in your life, wherever it is, happy or sad, optimistic or pessimistic or faithless or faithful or hopeful or hopeless. You've gotten here by a series of thoughts, feelings, experiences, circumstances, and interactions with other people. And those things, my friend, will not get you to the next place. There are some things that you have to change. There are some things that you've got to make decisions about. There are some internal structures that you've got to make changes to if you want to get there. So All in August is about what do we do that took us from where we've gotten to where we need to get to, and how do we make that happen? And today we're going to talk about, for just a minute, internal structure and how internal structures are the secret to what we're really able to do with our lives. It turns out that what your life is built on is where you can go from. I had an interview on Fox News that I'm going to tell you about in a minute, and it got me thinking this morning about some things I've recently read and some scripture that we need to talk about. And we're going to talk just for a minute about internal structure. And I just don't want you to give up on yourself yet. If you're frustrated with how it has been going, I want you to not give up on yourself. I don't want you, friend, to give up on yourself. I want you to remember the secret to self-brain surgery is this. You can't change your life until you change your mind. Listen, friend, I'm just going to spend a minute with you today. I've got something exciting to talk about, and it's been bouncing around in my head since I read this book called Mind Shift by Erwin Raphael McManus. He and I had a conversation. But in the conversation, we talked about something that he calls internal structure. He calls himself a mind architect. He's a writer of books and a pastor and a speaker and all of that, but he's also what he calls a mind architect. And what he means by that is he helps people, he consults and coaches people around the world to change the internal structure of how they think. Okay? And that's an important concept that I've been chewing on. And he tells a story in the first part of the book about a guy named Buster Douglas. And Buster Douglas, if you're a boxing fan, I've never been a real boxing fan, but when I was growing up, Mike Tyson was so famous because he just beat everybody. Nobody could stay in the ring with Tyson. Some of his fights were second. He'd have an anticipated fight that was coming up for months, and he'd knock the guy out in 12 seconds, and it was over. And all the people that bought pay-per-view for hundreds of dollars will be mad because they had these big parties and everything, and the fight would be over in 5 seconds. And Tyson was just a monster in those days. Buster Douglas, who was a nobody that nobody had ever heard of, came along, fought Tyson, and knocked him out. But Buster Douglas went from being unknown, basically, to knocking out the greatest fighter in the history of boxing at the time, and 3 heavyweight titles came his way. But here's what's interesting about the Buster Douglas story. The very first time that Buster Douglas defended his title, he fought a younger fighter named Evander Holyfield at the time. And Buster Douglas got knocked out because he didn't train. He was seen eating at McDonald's the day before the fight. And McManus tells the whole story in here. And I just want to make sure that I gave you the right info because it was Evander Holyfield. I was afraid for a second that I said the wrong fighter, but yeah, so Evander Holyfield knocked him out. And of course, Evander Holyfield ended up beating Tyson later too, and went on to become a champion himself. But Douglas became famous, knocked out the champion, did this thing one time. He obviously trained and prepared to fight Tyson, but then he lost his very first title defense. And he went on to become obese, diabetic, nearly died from diabetic coma, weighed 400 pounds at one point in his life, and just disappeared, became irrelevant in the boxing world, and never did anything of great note again in his lifetime as a professional fighter, even though he had the greatest single accomplishment of anybody up to that point. So Erwin said a line that stuck with me. Buster Douglas was structured for failure. He wasn't structured for success. And that got me thinking about a scripture from Matthew 7. Jesus told this story about building a house. Jesus said this, Matthew 7:24-27. You remember the little kids song? The wise man built his house upon the rock. Remember that? If you went to Sunday school when you were a little kid like I did, that song. The wise man built his house upon the rock. Remember? Jesus said it this way. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house. You can hear the song. And the house came tumbling down. The winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. That's what Jesus said. So think about Buster Douglas for a second, friend. As everyone said, he was structured for failure. So you think about, we talk a lot about goals. We always talk about it at New Year's resolutions and all that sort of thing. And we talk about goals. and we have these New Year's plans for goals. But James Clear in his newsletter, he writes a 321 newsletter that comes out every Thursday. Of course, James Clear wrote that book, Atomic Habits. It's not a spiritual book, but it's a tremendous perpetual bestseller because it's about habits and systems and how do we put our lives together? How do we structure ourselves for success? And a line that Clear talked about that he sent in his newsletter. It's a great newsletter, by the way, 321 Thursday. 3 ideas from him, 2 ideas from other writers, 1 question, and boom, it's it. Quick newsletter. I don't have the gift of writing like that. If you read my stuff, you're going to get 1,000 words. That's just how it is. It takes me a while to noodle out these ideas in my head. But James Clear comes in hot with these ideas every week. And one of them last week stuck with me. He said, goals will help you win once, but systems will help you win perpetually. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Goals will help you win once. Systems will help you win perpetually. And that's exactly the point about Douglas here. Buster Douglas had a goal of beating Mike Tyson, and he did it. He pulled it off. But what happened next is what really tells the story. Okay? What happened next was what really tells the story. What happened next was he failed. He didn't have a goal of becoming the greatest fighter that ever lived and staying there. He had a goal of knocking out Mike Tyson, and he did it. And then he went back to McDonald's, and he started eating, and he started stuffing his face and enjoying the fame and the money and not training and getting out of shape. And then his next fight, he got beat, and he disappeared. Let me ask you a question. Do you think, probably, some of us think, that if our circumstances were different, we would be different? Look in my eyes if you're watching the video. You think that if your circumstances were different, you would be different. If you only had more money, if you only got that promotion, if millions of people bought my book and I became a New York Times bestseller, if only that happened, then I would be happy. Then I would finally be where I thought I was going to be in my life. If only she said yes, if only he didn't cheat, if only the diagnosis hadn't been that, if I can only get that promotion. If and when I'm able to do this, then I'll be happy. When I'm able to do that, when she stops X, Y, and Z, when my husband starts acting better, when my husband finally gets off the couch and gets a job, then I'll be happy. Will you really? The question isn't about if and then. It's about your internal structure. Because as Buster Douglas teaches us, and as the man who built his house on the sand teaches us, if you are not structured internally for success, you won't survive. You won't be happier. You won't be better. You'll just have more money and more ability to make bad decisions. Okay? That's the sad truth, but it is true. I'm reading this book. I actually just finished reading a book by Bishop T.D. Jakes called Disruptive Thinking. This book's kind of messed my brain up. Now, it goes into some social stuff, and not everybody will agree with everything he says and all of that, but the premise of the book is that if you want to make real change, not just in your own life, but in society or in systems or in business or in your family or any of that, you want to make real change, you've got to change the way you think, which is lining up exactly with what I'm talking about with self-brain surgery, with what Erwin McManus is talking about with mind shift, and everybody's talking about cognitive neuroscience right now. But Jakes' book really is about, if you want to really change the world, you've got to be willing to disrupt systems that are in place. And he's right. But one thing he talks about is this idea of leaping over the fence. So he's got dogs and they have an electronic fence. And one of his dogs is real passive. One of their dogs will basically accept the limitation of the electronic fence and just have their world defined by the smaller yard that's available to them from the electronic fence. And one of their dogs wants to go outside the fence and has calculated that it's worth the pain of getting shocked to run through the fence. T.D. Jakes was just talking about the difference in these two dogs, and one of them accepts the limitation of the fence, and one of them understands that it might hurt to go through the fence, but there's a world of freedom out there and other things that they can explore, and it's worth it to them to accept the pain of breaking through that fence. And I've seen the same behavior in Harvey and Lewis. It turns out people will do the same thing. Some people are willing to jump the fence. But the problem is, what happens when you do jump the fence? What happens when you finally get to that place that you've always thought you were going to go to? Well, you'll discover, yes, there are new opportunities out there. Yes, you might have more money, more fame, more experience, more titles, more degrees, more whatever. You might actually, quote unquote, make it in this new place. But guess what else you're going to find out there? New threats, new problems, new storms, new people sniping at you because they want your new position. Okay? If you find your way to this new place that you always thought was going to make you happy, that you always dreamt of, you're going to find that there's a whole new set of circumstances and challenges and issues and problems and all of that. But the one thing you also will find out is you're the same person you were before you jumped over that fence. And if you don't have internal structures that are designed for success, you're going to have a problem. If you didn't build your house on the rock, you're going to have a problem. Sometimes the fence comes to you, okay? Sometimes you go through the massive thing. You get the phone call like we did years ago, and you find out your son died, or you find out your spouse has become unfaithful, or you find out your business went bankrupt and the market went south and you're not going to be able to retire like you thought you were. You got a diagnosis and your husband can't swallow or chew or can't move their arm anymore, and you're going to have to take care of them instead of growing old with them. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I've got a friend who's going through that right now. What do you do then? If your house is built, friend, on the sand of another person being healthy, or on the sand of you having to get a promotion to be happy, or on the sand of your health holding up, on the sand of your finances holding up, if your house is built, if your internal structure is built on circumstances that can be challenged or changed when the storm comes, then you're in trouble. I had an interview with Lauren Green, where she's a longtime Fox News host and has a podcast with Fox. And back in 2020, when we released my previous book, I've seen the interview, which you should read, by the way, if you haven't. But I've seen the interview, came out in January of 2020. We were in New York City, Lisa and I, for the launch. And we were on Lauren Green's show at the Fox News headquarters. It was a really cool experience for me and Lisa. But Lauren and I talked on the phone, another interview for my new book, Hope is the First Dose. And she asked me a question. She told me a story of a friend of hers who had a major challenge and lost a child and just went crash. Her house came tumbling down. And she turned basically her faith off. She decided that she couldn't believe in a God who would allow these things to happen in her life. And friend, I'm saying that to you to say this. There's going to be some things that come along and challenge you. There's going to be some massive things that occur, and you're going to struggle if your house is built on the circumstances that you thought you knew. If you had a set of beliefs and you thought that you had to have them to be happy, then when you no longer have them, you won't be happy. That's a shifting sand, okay? I'm saying that all in the context of saying this. If you have an internal structure that's designed to succeed, regardless of what happens to you, if you have a system instead of a goal, if you're Buster Douglas and you're training to fight Mike Tyson and your goal is to beat him, then once that's over and you've finally done that thing, you're not set up internally for continued and perpetual success, then what happens next? You've jumped the fence, you've gotten the title, you've gotten the fame and the money and the fortune and all those things that come along with that. What happens next will determine the rest of your life if you're happy or healthy or whole or not. Let me ask you a question. Can you name the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners? Can you name the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners? Can you name the last 5 or 2 or 1 Oscar winners for Best Picture or Best Actor or Best Actress or Best Sound Design? Can you name the last 5 presidents of France or prime ministers of Great Britain or presidents of the United States? You might not be able to. Most of us think that we're pretty up on our civics, but can you right now without looking it up? Can you name the last 5 presidents of the United States? Can you name the last 10 in order? Why am I asking you that? These are people who have accomplished the number one top thing that they can accomplish. Can you name the last 5 100-meter gold medal Olympians for this gold medal for the 100-meter sprint? Can you name them? You probably can't. Why? Because that kind of fame doesn't register with the world for very long, okay? You think it's the number one accomplishment that you could have in your entire life, whatever this thing is that you've set your heart on, that fence that you're going to jump to get there to finally knock out Mike Tyson or whatever. You think that's the biggest thing that could ever happen to you, and it probably will be. It might be. but you still have a life beyond that event, and nobody remembers that fight if you win. What they remember, if you're Tom Brady, they remember the 7 Super Bowls, okay? 100 years from now, people that follow football will remember that Tom Brady was probably the greatest quarterback that ever lived. Why? Because he didn't just win one Super Bowl. He kept winning. He had structured his internal life to pursue the goal of being the best at that position that ever lived and ever played. That didn't necessarily translate into him being the best person that ever lived. But in that genre, in that place, at that time, he was the best. And he has been over the sustained course of many years. Okay, but let me just tell you this. I don't know Tom Brady from Adam, but I do know this. He's retired from football now. So the real question of Tom Brady's life, the story that his life tells, and whether he turns out to have had a fulfilling and good life or not, will be how he's built his internal structure to be a human being after he plays football. Because the guy's not very old. He just retired from the NFL. He's in his early 40s. And Lord willing, he'll have another 40 or 50 years to live. What happens next will be based on his internal structure. Because he's phenomenally wealthy, he won't lack for money unless he's a moron. He should never run out of money. So it won't be about money. Will it be about relationships? Will it be about family? Will it be about faith? What will it look like for him? And how is he structured internally to succeed or fail? And that's the question for you. What are your internal structures? And are you a wise person or a foolish person? Because as I talked with about Lauren Green, when she asked me, how do you keep from losing everything? How do you keep from being one of those crashers that you talk about in your book when something bad happens? And the answer is, as Erwin McManus and I talked about, it's about internal structure. I'm a really good brain surgeon, okay? I can go in and I can remove your brain tumor, and many times, most of the time, I can do so with leaving you relatively neurologically okay. But I can't make a new brain for you, and I can't make your brain perform better than it did before you had the brain tumor. I can just remove the tumor and its influence and leave your brain to how it was. At best, right? Maybe even worse, because sometimes surgery creates new issues for people, okay? But the bottom line is this, friend. Look in my eyes. And my dad would always say, look in my eyes, look in my eyes, when he wanted to make a point that he wanted me to remember or really listen to. And here's the point. If your internal structure isn't right, if it's not built on something solid, if you haven't built your life on something that can't be taken from you, if it's not tied to circumstances, you can't be happy no matter what happens. You can't be healthy no matter what happens. You can't be better no matter what happens, because you're still going to be you once you jump that fence. And I just want you to remember here in August, as we wrap this up, don't give up on yourself, because you're a work in progress. And what got you here to this day, listening to this podcast, asking yourself these questions: am I structured for success, or am I structured for failure? Am I structured to get better? Am I structured to have circumstances wipe me out? Because these massive things, friend, they're coming. Okay? They're coming. And you've got to be ready for them. My plea to you, friend, is this: build your life in such a way that when the massive thing happens, you will have a treatment plan in place, and you'll be ready to hold on to the things that you know to be true, and you won't fall into that pit of despair, because you'll be able to move forward according to the treatment plan that you've prepared for yourself, because you've learned how to be a good brain surgeon for yourself. Okay? That's what I wanted to talk to you about today. There's so much more. The Erwin McManus conversation has so much more depth and meat to it. I want you to read Hope is the First Dose if you haven't read it. It's the treatment plan. It's how you structure yourself internally to prepare for these successes and not let circumstances wipe you out when the massive things happen. Okay? That's what we're all about. Just this idea. Don't give up on me yet, God. I'm trying here. And he's not going to. I saw a post on Instagram the other day. And this is something, if you're struggling with a sense of guilt or shame over something you've done, or you feel like God's going to give up on you because you've been trying and you just can't quite get it done, and how many times is he going to forgive me? Know this: Jesus went to the cross, okay, and he stretched out his hands and he let them beat him and mock him and put a crown of thorns on his head and drive nails into his hands and feet and pierce his side. And all the while they were doing that to him, while you and I were doing that to him, because he was there because of our sin, all the while, what's the last thing he said? Father, forgive them, They don't know what they're doing. And if he didn't give up on you that day, he's not going to give up on you this day. If he didn't give up on you when your sins were requiring him to be flogged and nailed to the cross, he is certainly not going to give up on you because it's August and you haven't figured out your internal structure yet. And you're still trying to become healthier and feel better and be happier. And you're still trying to get over that massive thing that happened to you. He's not going to give up on you, friend. He's not about to. And I'm not either. Lisa and I and Tata are praying for you. If you're new around here, we're grateful that you're here. We want you to remember that in order to become healthier and feel better and be happier, there's only one thing you have to do. You can't change your life until you change your mind. We're not giving up on you yet. Don't give up on yourself either. But remember, the most important thing and the best news of all is that you can start today. If you're finding All in August valuable, please share it with your friends. Send this episode to 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 friends. Do a small group, have a conversation, send each other text messages, encourage each other to go all in. Share the light. This podcast was heard in 153 countries in the last week. That has something to do with you sharing it with your friends. It's growing. People are getting on board. The world needs to go all in right now. All the craziness and all the weird stuff that's happening, it'll get better if we just decide to go all in, to find our purpose, to really follow what God is building us into being, what he put us here for. The internal structure of people that are resilient, that are hopeful, that have purpose, that know what the truth is, that go hard after it, to help other people find the light. I want you to change your mind, friend, because that's how you change your life. And the good news is you can start today.